Assessment of forest resources. Forest resources are used by many farming systems. There is no exact global figure for agroforestry because forests are used in many different forms and international agricultural statistics often do not fully capture these forms of use. As a rough estimate, it can be assumed that worldwide, probably several hundred million farming systems use forests or tree covered systems as a production factor. The analysis of forest resources focuses on their contributions to the success of the specific farming system. Such contributions can be divided into 5 categories. The first is the supply of wood for sale or for personal use, for example for the construction of buildings, barns, or fences. The second category is the supply of energy in the form of fuels. This includes, in addition to timber and charcoal, other tree products such as branches and cones. The third category is the collection of products produced by trees and forest areas. This includes, for example, herbs, mushrooms, nuts, and resins. The fourth category is the use as forest pasture. Production systems that combine animal husbandry with forest areas are referred to as silvopastoral systems. Forest pasture can also play an important role in times of seasonal scarcity of pastureland during the planting season in crop cultivation. The fifth category is protective functions, for example in erosion control or for shading sensitive cultivated plants and animals. Since trees and forests can fulfill several of these functions simultaneously, these categories are only conditionally suitable for classifying forest resources for the analysis of farming systems. A more suitable classification of forest resources is the distinction according to the tree stock and the ownership and usage rights. The classification according to the tree stock considers the type and composition of tree stands, their age classes, and the stand density per unit area. The classification according to ownership and usage rights considers the extent and duration of forestry use by the farming system. Restrictions can exist due to formal ownership relations and formal institutions that regulate the use of one's own forest areas. The measurement of the contributions of forest areas to the success parameters of a farming system depends on the types of use of the forest resources. Timber is measured in cubic meters. The unit of measurement for logs and branches is the steer. For the measurement of other products produced by trees and forest areas, the usual weight and volume measures are used. International standards are, for example, kilograms or cubic meters. However, farming systems often use local units of measurement, which can only be roughly converted into international standard units. The performance of forest pasture can be measured by its feed value in kilojoules and digestible crude protein. However, the feed value of forest pasture varies significantly more seasonally and locally than the feed value of managed pastures. The laboratory determination of feed value is rarely an option for farming systems. In most cases, the feed value is therefore assessed according to ordinal evaluation, that is, as sufficient or insufficient. An indication of feed value can also be provided by the supplemental feeding applied, and the development of animal performance during periods of forest grazing. The measurement of protective functions is carried out by measuring the consequences for the protected areas or animals. This measurement is made more difficult by the fact that, in addition to forest resources, other factors are also involved in the preservation of the protected resources. The monetary valuation of the performance of forest resources requires a choice between market values and internal values. Wood, fuels, and other products produced by trees and forest areas often have their own market value. For the assessment of forest grazing, the substitution costs for feed can provide an initial reference point. However, other consequential costs that would arise from switching from forest grazing to alternative feeding methods must also be considered. The assessment of protective functions is carried out through the evaluation of the consequences for the protected areas or animals, and is complicated by the same influences that also affect the measurement of these functions. However, decision-making in a farming system depends above all on the internal value of forest resources. This concerns not only their role in current activities. The assessment of trees and forest resources requires a long-term perspective. The performance of trees develops over several decades, and current decisions influence the situation of future generations. Forests form their own local climatic and ecological systems, which, if at all, can only be restored over long periods of time. Accordingly, questions of farm succession are relevant when evaluating and making decisions by decision makers in farming systems.